Tonight's story comes from someone who was just on a nightly walk with their dog along a quiet creek path that they had taken hundreds of times before, until one evening the dog stopped. What they saw in a roadside culvert that night should have been impossible, and what happened a few weeks later made it clear that whatever was down there had noticed them too. Hi, I'm not really sure if this is the kind of thing you're looking for. I've been watching your videos for a while, and a lot of the stories are from people with interesting jobs who went somewhere remote or saw something crazy. This isn't like that. I'm just a regular guy, and this happened in my town, which is about as boring as towns get. But I've been sitting on this for 6 months now, and I feel like I need to tell someone. So here it is. Sorry if it's not that interesting. I'm 27. I've lived in the same town in Ohio my whole life. I'm not going to say which town because it's small enough that people might figure out who I am, but it's in the northeast part of the state, maybe an hour from Cleveland. Population around 8,000. The kind of place with a main street that has a hardware store and a pizza shop and a couple of banks, and then everything else is Dollar General and gas stations. There's nothing special about it. People grow up here, some leave, some stay. I stayed. I work at the hardware store actually. Been there since I graduated high school. I started as a stocker and now I basically run the place because the owner is in his 70s and doesn't want to deal with customers anymore. It's fine. It's not a career or anything, but it pays the bills. And I know everyone who comes in, which is nice, I guess. I live in a rental house on the east side of town near the creek. It's a small place, 2 bedrooms, one of which I use for storage because I don't need 2 bedrooms. I've got a dog named Otis, a beagle mix that I adopted from the shelter about 4 years ago. He's a good dog. Calm, friendly, doesn't bark much. We've got a routine and it works for us. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand that my life is boring. I'm not someone who goes looking for weird stuff. I don't explore abandoned buildings or hike in the wilderness, or do anything that would put me in a situation where I would see something strange. I go to work, I come home, I watch TV, I walk my dog. That's it. That's my whole life. So when I tell you what I saw, I need you to know that I wasn't out doing anything unusual. I was just walking my dog. The same route that I've walked hundreds of times. There's a creek that runs through town. I don't know if it has a name. If it does, I've never heard anybody use it. It's just the creek. It's not big, maybe 15 feet across at the widest point, and most of the year it's only a foot or 2 deep. It runs through backyards and under roads and eventually connects to the river a few miles south. Nobody pays much attention to it. Kids play in it sometimes during the summer. That's about it. My usual walking route takes me through the neighborhood, past the little park with the rusty playground equipment, and then along a path that follows the creek for maybe a quarter mile. The path goes under Marsh Road, where the creek flows through a drainage culvert. The culvert is concrete, maybe 6 feet in diameter, and it runs under the road for about 30 feet. There are metal grates on both ends that are supposed to keep debris out, but one of them broke off years ago and nobody ever fixed it. Inside, it's always dark, even during the day. You can hear the water trickling through and sometimes you'll see a raccoon or a possum in there, but mostly it's just shadows. I've walked past that culvert probably 500 times in the 3 years that I've had Otis. Never thought twice about it. It was just part of the route. And last October, that changed. It was a Tuesday, I think, late October, maybe a week before Halloween. The days were getting short and it was already almost dark by 6:30. I had gotten home from work, changed clothes, and put Otis on his leash and headed out for our usual walk. The weather was cool but not cold. No wind, quiet. The kind of evening where sounds carry further than they should and everything feels a little bit muffled. I remember thinking it felt like the town was holding its breath, which is a weird thing to think, but that's what it felt like. We made it through the neighborhood and past the park without anything unusual. Otis was doing his usual thing, sniffing every tree and fire hydrant, taking his time. I wasn't in a hurry. I was listening to music on my earbuds and not really paying attention to anything. We turned onto the creek path and headed toward the culvert. I could see it up ahead. The dark circle of the opening, the road passing over it. The streetlight on Marsh Road had burned out a few weeks earlier, and nobody had replaced it yet, so that stretch was darker than usual. And that's when Otis stopped. Just stopped in the middle of the path and wouldn't move. His ears went flat against his head and his tail dropped, and he started pulling backward on the leash. Not hard, just steady pressure, like he wanted to go back the way that we came. I took my earbuds out. "What's wrong, buddy?" He didn't look at me. He was staring straight ahead toward the culvert, and he let out this low growl that I had never heard him make before. Otis doesn't growl. He's the friendliest dog that I've ever had. He likes everyone, strangers, other dogs, cats, whatever. I've never seen him react to anything with fear or aggression. But he was growling now, and his hackles were up, the fur along his spine standing on end. I looked at the culvert. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the dark opening, the faint gleam of water at the bottom, dead leaves piled up around the edges. I was about to tell Otis that he was being weird when I noticed something in the shadows. There was something inside the culvert, maybe 10 feet in from the opening, in the dark.
When that personalization happens, you are getting better care.
And it looks like if they're taking care of somebody from their family.
We've all
I squinted, trying to make it out. I thought it was trash, maybe a garbage bag that had washed in during the last rain, or a pile of branches and debris that had collected against the grate at the far end. And then I realized it was looking at me. I don't know how to describe what I saw. I've been trying to figure out the right words for 6 months and I still don't have them, but I'll do my best. It was pale, not white exactly. More like the grayish pink color of something that's never been in the sun, like the belly of a fish, or the skin under a bandage when you take it off after a week. That kind of pale, and it looked wet, slick, like it had just come out of the water or like its skin was coated in something. It was humanoid, I could tell that much. It had arms and legs and a head, but it was crouched, folded up, fitting itself into the culvert in a way that didn't look right. The limbs were bent at too many angles, like it had extra joints, or like the joints that it had could bend in directions that ours can't. It was compact, compressed, like a spider pulled into a ball. Like something that had made itself small to fit into a space that shouldn't have been able to hold it. The longer I looked, the more wrong it got. I couldn't see a face clearly. It was too dark and the thing was positioned with its head slightly turned, like it was watching me from the corner of its eye. But I could see the outline of a skull, and it seemed too large for the body. Or maybe the body was too small for the skull. The proportions were just off in a way that made my stomach turn. It was completely still. I couldn't even tell if it was breathing. It was just there in the dark, watching me, waiting. And the eyes, that's the part I can't forget. The eyes caught the faint light from somewhere, the sky maybe, or a distant streetlight, and reflected it back at me. Yellowish, like an animal's eyes when headlights hit them, that same flat shine. But they weren't animal eyes. They were looking at me, aware and focused. I don't know how long I stood there. Probably only a few seconds, but it felt longer. I couldn't move, I couldn't look away. I just stood there on the path with my dog growling beside me and this thing watching me from the dark. It didn't move, it didn't make a sound, just watched. Finally, Otis pulled hard enough on the leash to break whatever spell I was in. I took a step backward and then another. The thing still didn't move. I turned around and walked back the way that I came, pulling Otis with me, walking fast but not running. I don't know why I didn't run. Something told me not to. Something told me running would be worse. I took a different route home, the long way around, through the neighborhood streets. I didn't look back. I kept my eyes forward and I walked fast and I didn't slow down until I was inside my house with the door locked. Otis went straight to his bed and curled up with his back to the wall. He stayed there for the rest of the night. I told myself that it was nothing. A homeless person maybe sheltering in the culvert. That was the most logical explanation. People do that sometimes. It was a dry spot, out of the wind, hidden from view. Someone down on their luck could have been camping there. Maybe they had some kind of skin condition or they were covered in something, mud or dirt that made them look pale in the dark. Maybe they were curled up in a weird position because they were sick or injured or just trying to stay warm. But even as I thought it, I knew it didn't fit. No person looks like that. No person has skin that texture. No person folds themselves up like that, with limbs bent in too many places. And nobody would just sit there in the dark completely still, watching somebody walk past without saying anything or moving or asking for help. I thought maybe it was an animal, a sick deer that had crawled in there to die. Or a big dog, some kind of pale breed I didn't recognize. That made more sense. Animals can look strange when they're in weird positions or when the light hits them wrong. I've seen dead deer before that looked almost alien. Their bodies twisted from being hit by cars or ravaged by disease. But animals don't have eyes like that. Animals don't watch you with that kind of focus, that kind of awareness. And the shape was wrong for any animal that I knew. It was humanoid. It had the basic outline of a person, just wrong. I even thought that maybe it was a mannequin. Some kids playing a Halloween prank, setting up something creepy in the culvert to scare people. It was almost Halloween after all. That would explain the stillness, the pale color, and the unnatural posture. Kids do stupid stuff like that all the time. But mannequins don't have eyes that reflect light. And mannequins don't make dogs growl like that. Otis had never reacted to anything the way that he reacted to that culvert. He knew something was wrong. Animals know things. I went through every explanation that I could think of, and none of them worked. None of them fit what I saw. After a few days, I started to convince myself that I had imagined it, that I had seen something ordinary. A bag of trash, a dead animal, nothing. And my brain had filled in details that weren't there. It was dark, I was tired, and I had been listening to music and not paying attention. I had spooked myself and spooked my dog and seen something that wasn't real. And that's what I told myself. I almost believed it. I stopped walking that way. I took Otis the other direction, through the neighborhood streets, avoiding the creek path and the culvert entirely. It added about 10 minutes to our walk, but I didn't mind. I didn't want to go back there. About 3 weeks later, there was a water main break on one of the streets in my usual route. They had the road blocked off, big trucks everywhere, water flooding down the gutters, and I couldn't get through. The only other option was to go back the old way, past the culvert. It was earlier in the evening this time, maybe 5:30. Still some light in the sky, not fully dark yet. I figured it would be fine. Whatever I had seen or thought that I had seen wouldn't be there in daylight. Probably had never been there at all. I took Otis down the creek path. He was hesitant at first, pulling back a little, but I coaxed him along. As we got closer to the culvert, I watched it carefully, watching for any sign of movement, any shape in the shadows. There was nothing there. Just the concrete tube, the trickle of water, dead leaves piled at the edges. Empty, normal. I actually stopped and looked inside, just to be sure. Bent down and peered into the darkness. Nothing. I could see all the way to the far end, where the broken grate hung off its hinges. Just a drain. I felt stupid. Relieved, but stupid. I had been avoiding this path for 3 weeks because of nothing. Because I had scared myself with shadows and imagination.
Your inspiration, shared instantly. Your aura is limitless.
Chick Days are back, and it's time to see what's hatching at your local Tractor Supply. Find great deals on feed, bedding, and starter kits.
We finished the walk and went home. I let Otis into the backyard like I always do so that he could sniff around and do his business while I get his dinner ready. I went inside, washed my hands, scooped kibble into his bowl. Maybe 10 minutes later, I heard him scratching at the sliding glass door. This wasn't unusual. He always scratches when he wants to come in. But the way that he was scratching was different. Frantic. And he was whining this high-pitched sound that I had never heard him make before. I went to the door and I looked out. Otis was pressed against the glass trying to get in, his whole body shaking. His tail was between his legs so tight that it was almost touching his belly. He was terrified. I looked past him and into the backyard. It was almost dark now. The light from the kitchen window spilled out onto the grass, but beyond that, it was all shadows. I could see the fence at the back of the yard, the bushes along the property line, and the big oak tree in the corner, and something standing near the bushes, maybe 40 feet away at the edge of the light. Pale, that same grayish-pink color, wet-looking, slick, catching the faint light from the window. But it wasn't crouched this time. It was standing. I couldn't see details. It was too dark, too far away, but I could see the shape of it. The silhouette against the slightly lighter darkness of the fence behind it. And the proportions were wrong. The torso was too long. The arms hung down past where they should have stopped, almost to the knees. It was thin, so thin, like something that had been stretched. Like somehow it had taken a normal body and pulled it until everything was longer and narrower than it should be. The legs were bent slightly, like it wasn't quite comfortable standing upright. Like standing was something that it could do but didn't prefer. And the head, I couldn't make out the features, but the head was tilted at an angle. The way that you might tilt your head to look at something small and interesting. It was facing the house. Facing me. I could see the eyes, that same yellowish reflection catching the kitchen light. 2 points of flat shine in the dark at the height where a face would be. It didn't move. It just stood there at the back of my yard and watched me through the window. I grabbed Otis by the collar and I pulled him inside, slammed the sliding door shut, locked it and closed the blinds. My hands were shaking. I was breathing too fast. Otis was pressed against my legs, shivering. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the closed blinds for I don't know how long. 5 minutes, 10, trying to slow my breathing, trying to think. And then I went back to the window. I lifted the edge of the blind, just a crack, and looked out. The backyard was empty. Nothing but the bushes, and nothing near the fence. Just the grass and the tree and the shadows, like nothing had ever been there. That was 6 months ago. I haven't seen it since. But things have changed. I've changed. Otis won't go in the backyard anymore. At all. He'll go to the sliding door and then he'll stop, and no amount of coaxing will get him outside. Treats don't work, toys don't work. He just stands there and looks at me with this expression like I'm asking him to do something terrible. So I gave up. I have to take him out front now, on a leash, even just to pee. Every single time. Morning, night, 2 in the morning when he needs to go out. We go out the front door and walk to the tree by the sidewalk. He's fine out front. He just won't go in the back. He's not the same dog that he used to be. He's nervous now, jumpy. Sounds that never bothered him before make him flinch. He doesn't like being in rooms alone anymore. He follows me from room to room, always wants to be where I am. And sometimes late at night, he'll be lying in his bed and suddenly his head will come up and he'll stare at the back door, ears forward, and growl softly. That low, quiet growl that I had never heard before that night by the culvert. And then after a minute or two, he'll put his head back down and go to sleep like nothing happened. I don't know what he hears. I don't know what he senses. I don't want to know. I installed motion sensor lights in the backyard, 2 of them, one on each corner of the house, covering the whole yard. They go off sometimes at night. Usually it's nothing. A cat walking along the fence, or a raccoon getting into the neighbor's trash. Probably always a cat or a raccoon. Probably. I don't go outside after dark anymore. When I get home from work, I pull into the garage and close the door behind me before I get out of the car. I don't take Otis for evening walks. We go in the morning now before work when it's light out, when other people are around. I keep the blinds closed on the back of the house, all the time now, even during the day. I don't like looking at the backyard. I don't know what I saw. I've looked online, tried to find descriptions of things that match. Pale, wet, humanoid, with joints that bend wrong and eyes that reflect light. I've read all about kinds of cryptids and monsters, and I haven't found anything that fits exactly. There are things that are close, but nothing that's right. I've looked at pictures of things people claim to have seen. The rake, the crawler, things like that. Some of them are similar, I guess, a pale, thin humanoid. But the descriptions don't quite match what I saw. The proportions are different. The behavior is different. The thing I saw wasn't aggressive. It didn't chase me or threaten me or do anything at all except watch. It just stood there and watched, like it was curious about me, like I was interesting. That might be worse, honestly. If it had chased me, if it had tried to hurt me, at least I would understand what it wanted. But it didn't want anything. It just watched, and then it showed up at my house. Maybe it doesn't have a name. Maybe it's just something that lives here in this boring little town in Ohio, in the culverts and the creeks and the places that no one pays attention to. Maybe it's always been there and I've just never noticed it before. Or maybe it noticed me. That's the part that scares me the most. I've walked past there hundreds of times and never saw anything. Then one night I did, and it saw me back, and then it showed up at my house. It knows where I live. I'm not sure why I'm sending this. I guess I just wanted to tell someone. I haven't told anybody in town because I don't know how to explain it without sounding crazy. And what would be the point? What would they do about it? I still live here to this day. I don't know where else I would go. My job is here, my life is here, what there is of it. I can't just leave because I saw something that I can't explain. That's not how the world works. You see something, you keep going, you live your life. That's what people do.